Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the E to Me podcast. This is Alicia, and it's been a wild week. I don't know how you guys have been feeling, but there's been so many things going on here. Just not just in this country, all over the world. But one thing that's been really interesting to hear about has been this whole idea of a few folks within the Christian faith that are thinking that the rapture is uh, coming upon us. I believe on Tuesday, which is September 23rd. There's been like a whole sect of people that are convinced that the rapture will take place this coming Tuesday, and even on social media, you will see different folks sharing tips about how to manage during the rapture, instructions for folks who will not be caught up in the rapture, like how to proceed here on earth, um, guidance on how to, actually, for those who will be in the rapture, like how to, navigate that situation. I mean, it's wild. And obviously, other people who are questioning this whole thing as well. And so, when I think about this, and the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because um, I grew up in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and the origins of the Seventh-day Adventist Church stem from something similar like this by way of a sect called the Millerites. And in 1844, I believe, the Millerites were under the impression, in 1844, they were under the impression that um, that Jesus Christ was coming back in 1844. And so, like many extremist groups that we've seen that have done something similar, they, sold off all of their property and, did things to reconcile things here on earth in the hopes, that they would be met with this as like rapture type of situation. They would be caught up in the sky or in the air, however you want to phrase it, and will be with Jesus um, after the whole rapture situation goes down. And when I first heard about this, like that this was becoming a thing again, I thought, man, like I'm pretty sure we've had other instances, not so much the Millerite thing, but we've had other situations where we've experienced different cults. We've called them out as what they are, that have also convinced folks that there would be some type of departure from Earth in different ways, different modes of being transported out of here. And here we are. Here we are again with this concept of rapture and, will these folks actually be taken, you know, up in this whole situation to meet Jesus Christ? And what I understand about the rapture, right? A man by the name of John Nelson Darby. Now, he was a part of the Plymouth Brethren movement, and I'll share all this information with you guys here in the show notes. But he was the person who actually invented this idea of rapture. It wasn't something that was like truly biblical. Now, are there like uh, verses in the Bible that indicate that there will be some type of event that could take place? Of course. There are several verses in the Bible that talk about, different things like you'll be caught up to meet him. Certain people will remain here, another person will be left. And these are like teachings that you can see in different Bible verses by way of, quote unquote, Jesus Christ is speaking to different folks wherever, they were at the time. And so, yes, are there things that come up in that way? Of course, but does it truly say this is going to be a actual rapture? that is not something that's actually documented in the Bible. And a lot of people, like I said, a lot of people will, come up against that and argue um, that this is not true and that there is a true rapture. And it wasn't just something that was created by someone in the 1800s. And to those who are really in this idea of thinking that, oh, the rapture is really something that will take place, and they're waiting for, Jesus Christ to come back to this earth and, kind of like secretly or in a, um, blink of the eye, these people will be out of this realm. I mean, I feel for them, seriously, because to really be that conditioned and uh, brainwashed, I hate to say it that way, but it is what it is, to think that all this is going to happen on a particular date. um, I have to, I really encourage people to not follow things where there's a like specific date, time, and this and that. Because, and let me look this up because I know there's a, oh, 1 second. Yes. So there is a Bible verse, um, and it's found in Matthew 24:36 as well as Mark 13:32. And it says Jesus states that only the Father knows the time of the Son of Man's return. And obviously the verses, like, this is just kind of like a summary of what those verses really say. But there's no specific date or time, and according to these biblical texts, no one knows except the Father. And we're thinking about, actually God, the Godhead, only knows that information. I am not a religious person by any means. I grew up very religious. Like I said, I grew up in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and so I have a lot of, understanding and knowledge about the Bible because that was just my upbringing. We had, in many ways, no choice but to read the Bible and study it and, learn things from the Bible because that was just how the Adventist religion is set up. And in some ways, I'm glad that I had that opportunity to learn the Bible in the way that I did because it gave me the ability to study it as opposed to just taking someone's word. And the reason why I bring that up is that I'm concerned that a lot of people are still in that mindset of just taking some leader in the church that they attend, just taking their word and not investigating things on their own. And I'm not saying that the Adventist church is picture perfect in this regard, but I will say that when it comes to really studying the Bible, the Adventist does take the time to do that for the most part. And I can't speak for every Adventist congregation and how they operate, but from congregations I've been a part of, that has been a mainstay, is really understanding the word and learning it for yourself as opposed to just listening to someone and hoping for the best. So I wanted to also just kind of go into, because you're thinking, okay, this John Darby in around 1830 created this whole idea of rapture. You're talking about the Millerites of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, which is kind of around that same time, right? We're talking like 14 years later. The Millerites have created this idea that will be they will meet Jesus on during this year, and they had a particular um time and date, and I believe it was in October. Don't quote me, but I think it was around that time that they thought that this was going to take place. And I have a few articles I'm gonna share, but this article here is from Adventism uh, 150. It's talking about the aftermath of 1844 and what caused the Adventist Church to become a worldwide movement. And so The article starts off, it says, the year 1994 marks 150 years of the October 22nd disappointment of the Millerite Adventism. Up to that date, Millerites had been certain that Christ would return in 1844. But suddenly their hopes were shattered, their certainties replaced by disorientation. On October 23rd, the disappointed Millerites found themselves in the midst of a sudden and unexpected identity crisis. So it goes on to say that the subsequent months and years found those who remained faithful to their Advent hope in a search for identity. Who were they? What did it mean to be an Adventist at this point, right? The answer to these questions was not obvious at the time. Further Bible study and heart searching were in order. Between 1844 and 1848, three major strands of post-Millerite Adventism evolved. Okay. And so from there, the first was the spiritualizers. This group gave up the literal interpretation of the scripture and it spiritualized the meaning of even concrete words. Thus, they could claim that Christ had come on October 22nd. He had come into their hearts. That was the second coming. This group spawned a large amount of fanaticism. The second group was the Albany Adventists, so called because they organized along congregational lines at Albany, New York, in May of 1845. Their aim was to distance themselves from the fanatics among the spiritualizers. They continued to look for cleansing of the sanctuary as the second coming of Christ. Further time settings sprang up periodically in their midst. The group's proponents eventually gave up any firm belief in Miller's prophetic scheme. Joshua V. Himes and Josiah Litch, Miller's chief lieutenants, belonged to the segment of Adventism, and did William Miller himself up to his death in 1849. All right. And now the third group. A third group eventually concluded that Millerites had been correct in the dating of the 2300 days of Daniel and of Daniel 8:14, and that something of importance had happened on October 22nd, 1844, but the event was not the second advent. Rather, it was the beginning of the cleansing of the heavenly sanctuary. This group develops around several key doctrines, including continuing belief in the near advent of Jesus in the clouds of heaven, the sanctity of the seventh-day Sabbath, Christ's two apartment minis try in the heavenly sanctuary, the conditional nature of immorality, and the perpetuity of spiritual gifts, including the gift of prophecy. All right. These Sabbatarian Adventists came to see themselves as the only true heir of pre-disappointment Adventism, since unlike spiritualizers, it advocates continue to hold a literal Advent, and unlike Albany Adventists, they continue to hold to Miller's principles of prophetic interpretation. The foremost leaders of the Sabbatarians were Joseph Bates and James and Ellen White. Between 1844 and 1866, six denominations arose out of the three branches of Millerism. The Albany Adventists gave birth to four of those denominations: the American Evangelical Conference in 1858, the Advent Christians in 1860, the Church of God, Oregon, Illinois in 1850s, and the Life and Advent Union in 1863. The Sabbatarian movement resulted in two denominations: the Seventh-day Adventists between 1861 and 1863, and the Church of God, Seventh-day in 1866. With their diversity, individuality, and lack of organization, the spiritualizers' wing of Adventism formed no permanent bodies. Various spiritualizers eventually gravitated to the other isms, more stable Adventist groups, or were absorbed back into the larger culture. And I wanted to just talk about I wanted to share that with y'all. And there's more to this actual article. And like I said, I'll share it here in the show notes. But I wanted to share at least that much of it because I am really curious to see what happens after this coming Tuesday. Because like the Millerites, I'm assuming that there are people who are really serious about this whole rapture thing and really believe that it's about to go down. Like go down like major, right? Um my concern is, as like this document shared, that there will be a lot of people who are left, just dumbfounded and feeling as if everything they've known in terms of their beliefs, their spirituality, their ideas around their particular faith and religion have all been kind of like debunked. We don't know what will happen, right? We don't know what these people will experience come this coming Tuesday. Uh, I think for me, it's just it's I wanted to talk about this because I know what it's like to be in a religious situation and be so hardcore with it and fight it to the death when people would come up in opposition to what I thought, what I believed, what I was taught. And it's taken me a while to get to a point where I realize for me, and I just definitely want to preface for me that religion is not the thing for me. I'm more spiritual. I do believe in God. I believe there's a higher being uh, that wants the best for us here on this planet, and just wants us to thrive and be our best selves. I totally believe in that. But in terms of the man-made uh, thoughts and feelings around how we govern ourselves in terms of our spirituality and by which is basically religion, I don't subscribe to that. And I don't subscribe to it for several reasons. I feel like it's a means of control. I feel like it's a means of just keeping you in line, right? You don't question much of anything. You just trust what your pastor's saying or your reverend or priest or whatever that looks like, whatever entity, a religious entity you are a part of or organization rather. Um, and that's just my thought and feeling on it. And I've seen many people in the, church, regardless of the religion that you're a part of, get burnt. Just get burned out and get burnt by people in the church because of questioning um certain things and doing things that were considered, worldly or possibly getting pregnant out of wedlock, things of that nature that have really caused a lot of strife in a person's life. And because they're not, quote unquote, following, the guidance and guidelines of whatever biblical stance that church has, uh, what they've built their foundation on. Because that's what a lot of it is too, is like, a lot of these churches have found certain verses, different scriptures that have created what is now their particular religion. Some people have these, prophetic um, things that happen, right? Like they have a prophetic, I'm blanking on the word, but some type of like spiritual experience where they only between them and God they had this experience, and by way of that, people have believed them, and religions have been formed from that as well. And I'm not discrediting anybody with whatever spiritual, things that have happened to them because listen, personal relationship is the key, right? Your personal relationship with God is yours. Um, and to that, I say, let it remain personal, right? You can share stories with people, right? I totally agree with that. Share stories with people and talk about, the goodness of God and how, your spiritual journey has led you to do da 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 da, and X, Y, and Z. But to completely say that this particular experience that happened to you or some type of like spiritual awakening has happened, and now everyone has to follow suit with whatever you think and feel because you've had this spiritual awakening and you've created all these guidelines for folks, that's where I have an issue. And to even this point of, you know, John Darby having this creation of the rapture, that he invented the rapture. And, I haven't looked completely, and I'm not going to pretend I haven't like gone and, really delved into Mr. Darby's, rationale to actually sharing this with folks and, convincing people that the rapture is a thing. But I just encourage people more than ever, especially now because there's so much information out here, y'all. There's so much information. And you can be bombarded so much so that you just don't even investigate and be like, you know what, so and so said it, so I believe it. And okay, but I encourage you to muster up a little bit of strength and make sure that it's factual, right? Make sure that you are getting the proper information because I hate to see what's going to happen on the 24th of this month when folks are still here living life. Similar to the Millerites and their disappointment in 1844 on October 23rd when they realized that, oh, we're still here. Yikes. Now what do we do, right? And as I said, there's been other situations, different cults. People have, labeled these other um, groups that have also followed suit with something similar to this, where they thought that they were going to be, um, you know, ascending out of here as well, and they found out that that was not the case. Or unfortunately, some folks died because they took substances and were convinced that these substances would take them to um, meet, uh, you know, their maker, right? And to that, I just say, oh, sorry, I got something in my mouth there. I encourage y'all. I encourage you to please take the time to research things. This is not a diss. I'm totally aging myself by saying dissing, but this is not some type of you discrediting God by questioning things that you've been told, or even questioning things that are in the Bible. Like, there's nothing wrong with asking questions. There's nothing wrong with that. For so long, I was, in many ways, we were told not to question, even though growing up in the Adventist church, we were pretty sound in, learning the Bible and and, really studying it. But to question certain things, that's always been an issue. And things could have changed. I don't know. I'm not into the church like that anymore. So I don't want to say certain things are still happening and they're not. But from my experience, it was a thing you didn't question God. God was perfect. Everything that was created by him, whether it be the Bible and the folks that were given divine you know, prophecy to write these books, you didn't question it. Um and to that to that I say we still need to question. We still need to question what's going on out here, whether it be from those 66 Bibles, books that are in the Bible, whether it be, some pastor or some church leader telling you that the rapture's coming and you need to prepare, somebody on TikTok or some social media platform that is telling you something similar, whether it be religious based or not, even down to the politics of this country, to this world, question everything. you know? Uh, you're better for it. It sheds light on things that some people may have never thought to even look further into, and it can allow other people to start doing the same. So, like I said, I'll share this information in the show notes, guys. But for those of y'all, I don't know if anyone that listens to the podcast is into this whole rapture thing. I encourage you, if you have not already, I say hold on to all your stuff. I'm being so serious. I'm not even trying to be funny. Do not get rid of anything. Don't quit a job if that's what you've been instructed to do. Whatever that looks like for you. Because this is not the time or place to be just, uprooting and hoping for the best. I mean, this economy is what it is. The United States is on the fritz, and you just need to be mindful. You just need to be mindful of what you're being taught, what's being shared with you, and what is really going to work for you in the end. Um, yeah, yeah, this is wild. This is wild to me. But like I said, guys, please, please, please do the work and allow folks to have a personal relationship with their creator. Because, I mean, even though growing up in the church, that was said a lot, it wasn't really implemented. It was more so, even though you have a personal relationship, you still have to follow these guidelines because this is what God told you to do. And it's like, okay. But yeah, allow folks to have their own relationship, allow them to learn and grow in the ways that they want to. For those who are still, in the church and that are still studying, religion, go for it. Do you. But also, like I said, don't be afraid to question things. There's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't make you less of a Christian, less of, Muslim, whatever your, religious background is. It doesn't make you less of that. It just allows you to have critical thinking skills and then make the decisions based off your questioning and what you find out, if that is something that is meant for you. Because even though we come together as a congregation, it's just like anything. You come together, you meet with people that are like-minded, whether it be a weight loss group, AA, whatever that looks like. Everyone still has a personal journey and an individual um, way of doing things. It's not everything is cookie cutter. There are certain things that require us to come together and talk about our experiences. Then once we're out in the world, we have to then experience our actual spiritual journeys as such, as our own. Um, Prayers to those who are in this mindset of thinking that the rapture's coming. I pray that you um, have the ability to understand in the event or when it actually does take place that this is not a thing, that you are able to come out of this on top, because this is wild to think that this is still a thing, that folks still kind of like fall for these tricks in so many ways. But here we are. Yeah. So guys, like I said, I'll share this information in the show notes. I love y'all. Let's constantly question and be in a position to research ourselves and not just rely on someone for information. Because I feel like this is definitely one of those times when people are just relying on information and have no idea what's really going on. So yeah, once again, I love y'all. All the information, once again, I think I said this like 5 times. It'll be in the show notes, the document that I read from in terms of the Millerites, as well as some information just about the rapture and different scriptures and things of that nature. If you guys are interested in any additional topics that we can talk about here on the podcast, I am open to you guys sharing that with me. If you want to share that with me, you can DM me on any social media platform. I am the Alicia Christian on Instagram. You can find me as Alicia Christian on Facebook. On TikTok, I'm Leash. Even if you email me, I'm AliciaRChristian@gmail.com. Also, you can email me at eatingmepodcast@gmail.com. There's so many ways to reach out to me. So, Yeah, let me know because I would be interested in just talking about things that are quote unquote eating at me, like this topic today, as well as just food stuff too. I am open to suggestion. All right, y'all. I hope you have a great week. And listen, let's just keep on keeping on. I love you, and I'll see you next week. All right. Bye.